There we go. I'm turning down that intro music because you know what time it is. It's time for ThursdAGE, but instead of Owen Casey Stevens, we have Malcolm Sheppard. How are you, my friend?
Hey, I'm good.
There we go. I was like, where's our music? Groovy tunes have been heard, says Nicole Lindros. Nicole, can you also hear our voices and this beautiful music that I've picked out especially for Malcolm? It's like Hell Circus. So ThursdAGE is our weekly discussion. You know, we have focused up until now on Fantasy Age, and Owen has always said, you know, there are other age products. And I was like, yes, I know, but my brain is so small, I can't possibly. And then the other day I read a review. It was kind of a rundown by a friend named Pookie, I believe, Pookie, well known in the RPG review circles, on a beautiful old kind of timey blog, and it was so well written, and I learned a lot of stuff. But we were like, well, let's just have Malcolm on, and we should do that someday. And then unfortunately, Owen was ill, but fortunately, you were available to hang out with us. So thank you for that, my friend.
No worries, and I hope Owen gets better soon. Yes, there are, just to jump off of that, there are multiple lines that use the age system. So the sort of rough genealogy of age, of course, starts with the licensed Dragon Age RPG, which uses the first iteration of the age system, right? Different in some respects. And then from there, we moved on to Fantasy Age. Um, and there's also Blue Rose, which is developed by Joe Carricker.
Oh,
And
Joe.
yes, and there's Modern Age, which is me mostly.
Mostly, yeah. You have your fingers in a few different ages, but what I was gonna say, we've got something coming up for Fantasy Age. Do we want to cut into that real quick before we do a deep dive into Modern Age?
Yeah, let's. Um, so next week, we are going to drop Fantasy Age Trojan War,
Nice.
which is sort of a truncated age adaptation of a book that Green Ronin produced about 16 years ago for the D20 system. And
Malcolm.
this is really sort of a reimagining using the original as a framework, but it's built for Fantasy Age. And also, as I think Owen mentioned, because we've all been working on the new Fantasy Age core book, there are some ideas from that are softly brought into Trojan War, and it should work with the basic rule book or the new core book without too much trouble.
Nice. Well, I've got the proof of it. Our boss brought it by, and it is pretty darn cool. It's really I don't know what I was expecting. I was expecting, excellence, of course, because Troy and all that, and and so,
You
but
feel a personal connection.
I do, I take it personally. But our boss, speaking of which, says, and the Expanse.
Oh yeah, yeah. I guess that counts.
Our
That's
friend,
that's
yeah,
that's that's Ian.
that is Ian. Yeah, Ian
His game.
Lemke, and it is just taking off gangbusters. We have
Yeah, I hear people like it.
a little bit, just a tiny bit. We've
Okay.
also got like every hour on the hour is a new stream. And so, and they're all
Oh
great.
yeah,
They're so fun.
yeah. It's been pretty. Yeah, so we have a place where the company kind of collects all of its social media mentions, and yeah, you look at that, and there's a new Expanse game coming up on streaming. Like almost as often as you can blink, it seems sometimes.
Truly, truly. Yeah, it's very it can be a challenge to kind of track them. They kind of come and go, like they're not come and go, but they just come in a flood and I'm like, "Here, I'm helping this person." And then I'm like, "Wait. Are you the same person who just yeah." Um Hey, this is great. Mark pops in and says, "Hello, Modern Age. My favorite version of the age system." And you know what's interesting is we always talk about the age system, or we always say modern age, and you note that it's in all caps, and that it means angry, geriatric elephants. What is age? What is the age?
Aggrieved German expressionists.
Yours is way better than mine.
It's the adventure game engine, right? So all of these, so age has evolved through different cores and for different goals, but it's all based on the bones laid down by Chris Pramas in Dragon Age and Fantasy Age. So it means that one of the advantages is converting things between the books is not a big deal, right? One of the things in modern, like in the in Enemies and Allies, which is sort of our monster book for modern age, which has a whole bunch of different antagonists, and some are science fiction inspired, and some are fantasy inspired, and some are horror inspired, and some of them are for kind of contemporary game mainstays, like cops and crooks, and and the sort of elite folks that you might meet in a techno thriller style game, for example. But in that book also is a set of rules for converting things from sources like the Fantasy Age bestiary into modern age, right? And doing it vice versa is very easy too, right? So you can port stuff nicely between games. And sometimes we do concurrent development on the same idea and bounce them back and forth, and they'll appear in two different age sources and influence each other. One of those examples is actually from The Expanse. That's the turn system, because the turn system was initially outlined while I was working on the Modern Age Companion, which is a book of a whole bunch of additional options for characters and rules and things like that for Modern Age. And I thought, well, I like the churn, and I like game mechanics that allow you to sort of tweak the rhythm of the story and sort of the amplitude of success and failure. And so I thought, well, this is really good for that. But I think for modern age, you'll probably want some more concrete benchmarks, so that if you build up this much of churn, forget what we actually call it in the modern age companion, then you might encounter this additional test or something like that, right? And so I mentioned that, and then meanwhile, while they were working on the Expanse, they're going, well, we need some more concrete benchmarks for the turn system. And I kind of went, what, like these? And so that in turn got, tweaked again and sort of put it into the final system. So there's stuff like that going on all the time.
Malcolm,
And one of the things I like about the different age games is that is something that is really easy for anybody to do, right? Not just in back end design, but when you're coming with house rules for your own game in any age system, like the dueling system in the companion, in the modern age companion would work fine in fantasy age. There's also for I think the Expanse game might work well with in the modern age mastery guide, which is on the cusp of sort of moving to its next stage in production, but it's pretty much laid out and stuff. There are rules for dramatic murder. So that's if you want to kill someone in a movie mystery sort of way, instead of a whittle down their health until they fall over. Right? So that might work in the Expanse. So
I
there's
like
a lot
it.
of that back and forth interaction. And that really went beyond the bounds of what we were talking about, didn't it? Oh
It did not, and nothing's out of
well.
bounds. As our Thursdalians, as we like to call them, they know that we kind of go all over the place, but stay right where we need to be. So Apuk says angsty Gen Xers, and then Mark Karen was my favorite. He says angst game engine for techno thriller cyberpunk. Yeah, churning it up in Blue Rose. That mechanism of a sort. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I like it. So I have a question for you. You know, there are different creative careers in the sort of arts, we'll say, and I'm going to place you firmly in that space as a phenomenal writer and as somebody who can.
Oh, shucks.
You have a way of you get social systems and kind of the mechanism by which people onboard to a notion, and you do it real well. I've watched you in action, both with um, the content creation programs that we run, and in just seeing your process as you're sort of introducing new ideas and pitching sort of these creative things. Are you somebody that likes to, in some spaces, like you paint the picture and then it hangs on the wall and you're done? But in this slice of the creative world, you paint the picture and then maybe a few months or half a year or whatever down the line, it's like you give someone the picture and then say, I don't, do something with this, wear it, repaint it, make a rule about it. And you kind of keep doing that with this content, like refining it or changing it as, sort of taste change and all that. Do you prefer that kind of creativity where you kind of go back and revisit?
Well, a lot of development is looking at what has been submitted and looking at an idea and trying to bring out its best possible expression, right?
Yeah.
Um, and but there's a point like when you're making books, right? There's a point where it goes into production and you're finished with it, right?
Right.
And then after that, that's where it goes into players and game masters' hands, and they do that kind of thing with it.
Yeah.
And certainly with a lot of the stuff that I've done for Modern Age, the emphasis really is on you kind of continuing the development process at home with the tools that we've given you, right? Because we have a bunch of mechanical options. Like in Modern Age, for example, you have the three modes, right? There's gritty, pulpy, and cinematic,
And
you
Allah,
know,
right?
and yeah, and each of those has a set of rules attached to it to emulate loose category of genres, right? So if you wanted the kind of action movie where heroes can shrug off bullets and do these outrageous things, then that's cinematic. And if you want one where getting shot at can really ruin your day, that's gritty. And in between there's pulpy. Um, and then in the companion and in the upcoming mastery guide, we're going to, we have a whole bunch of other systems. The mastery guide is a little different because it has upcoming a couple of recommended changes to the modern age core that we've kind of come up with through more longitudinal play. Um, in case people are wondering, I play modern age almost every week. I don't run it. A friend of mine runs
Oh, I thought
a
maybe you like
three-fold game.
sneak into other people's games and sort of not say who you are. Like, hey, I'm ready to play.
Actually, I've never not said who I was, but I have sat in with groups playing games that I've done significant work on.
You know what I will do is I will put a mustache on and I will say that I am you and I will just start playing. Yeah.
Oh,
You're making no new friends, let me tell you.
well, then people will talk about how handsome I've become.
Yes,
For that.
that's exactly what they're
Um,
saying. Hey, real quick, I just want to say this. This is interesting. So, Rain says, I started using Modern Age's challenge test in my Fantasy Age game as soon as I found it in the core rulebook. That's what's kind of nice
oh
about
yeah,
this stuff, right? Yeah.
that's a great system. And that actually comes from Crystal Fraser because
Has many good
when
things to
Modern
do.
Age was being initially developed, Crystal was developing, like I was alluding to earlier. I haven't developed every Modern Age book, right? World of Lazarus was developed by Crystal, and in it, invented what are called breaching tests, and it was in the Lazarus book. But I liked it so much, I asked if I could take it from there and put it right in the core rules.
Because you just know a good thing when you smell it, right? You're just like,
Well,
that's
yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? I mean, you want to. It really, it really filled a hole in doing things like complex capers and abstracting a lot of things that otherwise you might have to do a zillion different tests for,
little
right?
art. Yeah, yeah.
What you really want is something that will be represented in a movie by a montage, for example,
Sure,
right?
yeah. Well,
Um,
I do often need help with the complex caper.
yes, well, it's the trickiest.
Yeah,
Um,
you never know what montage to play. It's really tough.
I actually have an anecdote about the sitting in with people that I
Yeah,
always like to share, if you'll
please
indulge me.
do.
So I did that in when third edition 3.5 D&D was big. I actually sat in on a bunch of games and I took notes, right? Because I wanted to be a better writer designer, right? So I did
Yeah.
this for my own education. And one of the things, there are two things that I kind of found out about Dungeons and Dragons through that, which I always love to share. The first is that I noticed that rogues were, or any character where how well you do at a thing depends on your relative position. Um, all characters like that were more powerful in games where there are maps and miniatures,
Okay.
right? And that is because if you're running a game, the tendency is always to be conservative about what the characters can do because you're nervous that they'll overturn things. So if it was left up to the game master or dungeon master in this case, they would always go, "Oh, you can't get up behind that guy," right?
Right.
But if it was there with squared away with the miniatures, right? It was basically like a board game, and there was no debate, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing is that clerics and other support type characters who don't, fight the monsters themselves regularly but help other people, um, they always had to have more power as kind of a bribe
To keep them on the
because they
track.
were just less cool than the
Right.
frontline characters, right? So those are the two, and I've applied that to other games too, and kind of the knowledge that supporting characters need a pat on the back, and characters whose abilities are conditional need a reliable framework to have that operate in. And that doesn't even have to do with age, but I still told it to you.
Yeah. Well, I think
Sorry
it.
about
No, so
that.
here's what's interesting about this, and I know from some feedback, direct feedback, that one of the reasons why people like to connect to these opportunities and the things that we do here is because we talking about the design intent or the how you get to a place um, is a valuable piece of information. It really helps take some of the mystery out of why have people made this decision. I've got my most favorite game that I've ever played in my life, and I've invested thousands of you know dollars and thousands more hours in playing it. People get really personal about it, and I find that
Yeah.
when people get a chance to hear the thought that went into it and why things were changed that may at first blush seem like somebody slapped their baby,
Mm.
really when we get to kind of get into the head of a designer or a developer and hear sort of that the reasons behind it in that sort of thoughtful intellectual sort of way, people, it really takes some of the slight out of it, and then it really then becomes a discussion about how much care goes into these things, and
Well,
people learn a thing too.
it's weird because I mean, I guess I will come up with overarching ideas about things, but it's usually after making dozens or hundreds of tiny decisions,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Working on a draft or working on an outline or something like that, right?
right.
Um, So, really the big ideas sometimes come post hoc and then you apply them to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or sometimes you go back and make a bunch of changes. Oh, and I can think of an example, but it is for something that hasn't been announced yet.
Huh? Can you
It's
talk about it without any?
Well, I can say that it is a large book, and it is an age book, and I hope people really, really like it. But
Right, right.
the
Well, I mean, when we're talking about these kinds of things, folks are. I think folks will like Pony Age.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
well, I don't know. I never really got into I never really got into. I know somebody who's a big
Brony?
brony. Yes, that's it.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's either I have no reason to believe it's anything but as sweet as it appears to be at times, but I'll admit to being a little sus about that, a little suspect. But yeah, so you heard it here, Pony Age.
um, All right, Trojan War. That's a
Yeah.
good one. Okay, I can think of something in Trojan. So, Trojan War has a whole bunch of things that are true to the mythology, but come off as arbitrary. For example, Trojan War has rules for having the gods show up, right? But they're Greek gods that show up. And here's the thing with Greek gods: they're immortal, and they're not immortal in the like they live forever unless somebody sticks them with a spear or something, right?
Right.
Um, the tradition was that they were really totally indestructible, pretty much. And in the Iliad, when the gods take to the field, for the most part, it is sort of played as something that is a bit funny and fruitless. Right? They can, however, feel pain and embarrassment, right?
Ah.
And so this is sort of worked into how the gods show up, right? In that you can't really kill them. However, you can sufficiently annoy them to make them leave.
As-
So,
Am I hearing like, yeah, that sounds like you're literally explaining like what my real life class is. Like I am the annoyer.
yeah. So there are some considerations for that. But as time went on, and I was doing the rules for divine bonds, which are like relationships, except they're how God feels about you, right?
Ah.
And it comes with like a collection of stunts if they want to, drop rocks on you or create problems for you, things like that.
Okay, now
Or if
is
they like you as
I was
well.
gonna ask, yeah. So it's not always
Yeah.
contentious.
But it raises the question of like, why would the gods follow these particular rules, right? After I've laid down all these rules about the things they will and won't do and the ways in which they will and won't appear, right?
Right.
And then, the unifying principle I eventually got to from there was the idea of fate. Because of course, in Greek mythology, you have a sense of fate that is not something that you can defy. Um, Even if you're a god, mostly, right?
Right, right.
And later, in Greek mythology, the role of fate passes to a bunch of different figures. Although in the Iliad, it's vaguely assumed to be one of Zeus's duties as the king of the gods. So you have this idea of the fate theme running through Trojan War, right? As being the reason why the world is set up the way it is, and and then that kind of leads quite naturally to going, well, how do you moderate that in a game? It's like, well, fate is fate is basically the game master's tool to make things make sense in a Greek mythic sense. So in the revised game mastering advice, that's something that we allude to. But that came from making a bunch of smaller decisions
Yeah.
about how the systems were going to work and what their rationale was going to be.
Hey, real quick. Funny. Nicole says Troy Neuer. The Troy Neuer. That has a bad mouthfeel, but it's fun to be because that's me. Um, there's a question here. There's a few. We've got the Four Ponies of the Apocalypse, maybe. David, have you been reading our personal Green Ronin journal? That's private. You can get out of there. I thought we had that locked up. Um, there's some great questions. Nicholas Morrow, you are right on time, my friend. And I'll put a pin in this one because I think it's a good one, and we'll unpack that towards the end. And he asks, they ask, what's the best way to plan and outline an espionage spy campaign, which is super fun. But we'll talk about that in a minute. Um, David Epperson, stand aside. I write large books.
Well, pick a
uh,
question and I'll.
Yeah, I'm just gonna run down here, and we're just so folks are aware. We're talking about more than threefold. We're just talking. You know what? We're talking with one of the luminaries of the tabletop role play genre space, and we'll definitely kind of straddle the line of sort of designer, developer insight, and then actual product information, which I know
Yeah.
people want.
I
Jay,
really like Threefold, and you should get it though.
yeah, I think you should too, Nicholas. So if you don't
It
have it,
is the. It's sort of. It was intended. It is intended to be kind of our flagship setting for modern age, in that you can use the maximum number of options that the game presents, because Threefold, of course, takes place on an infinite number of planes that include alternate Earth and fantasy lands and hellish, nasty places you don't want to go. And you explore the planes, um, and you can get bionic parts, psychic powers, magic,
I
all
like
kinds
it.
of things.
I,
Oh,
go ahead.
and membership badges; those are very important. That's
Can we do? Can we live stream a quick start or a something? I'm just not as familiar as I need to be with modern age, and I feel like maybe we pull some folks who haven't played that are always hanging around in chat and bugging me all the time everywhere I go.
well. I could give it a shot for someone sometime, maybe,
Okay, sometimes that
or
actually,
someone
yeah.
better at GMing than me.
Is there someone better than you at jamming?
Well, there's Joe.
Oh, well, I mean, that's, you know,
Joe's amazing. I'm not half bad, I guess.
you're really, really good.
I ran a threefold adventure at NorwestCon.
I watched it. It was very good.
And yeah, we ran a little long, and it was fun. Um,
That's fun, right? Real quick, I'm sorry. There's already people signing up in the chat here. Let's see. So if you are somebody who you think you would like to join us for a future, I mean, I'm not committing us to a time, but maybe it's tomorrow. No, I'm kidding. It's not. But if you think you might want to join us for a broadcast quick start or something, and yeah, Jonesy played in there as well. Jonesy, just have a question about Trojan War. Is it a PDF release or is it going to be? Are we doing POD on that?
yes, we are.
Yes. There you go, Jonesy. That better make you smile. Let's see. Okay, this is interesting. So let's unpack this. Jake Koch says, I love running threefold, but find Nemesis problematic and mildly uncomfortable. I still want it in game, but I would love more advice for using it and its minions at tables.
Okay, so in threefold, the backstory is that there are essentially three beings that fall. And this is sort of game master level material, but you know, everybody reads the GM section.
They do, yeah.
Um, but there are sort of three metaphysical powers that are contending for the metacosm, which is the set of all possible universes. Um, and one of them is sort of called the Nemesis, and it is primarily responsible for the creation of the netherworlds, which are these hellish planes, and which basically exist as factories to strip souls of self-identity through pain and toil, right? To create this sort of massive energy that the Nemesis can use to sustain itself. So, there are ways. We've been we've been playing threefold. Like I said, I play in a modern age threefold game. I don't run it. I did run it. I did run a short game before, but my friend in our regular group, he runs it. And one of the things that we've had as kind of a constant thing is dealing with soul thieves, right? In threefold, the soul is something that, with certain things, you can remove from somebody's body and store it as a sort of liquid
Yeah.
in a jar with a stopper.
Oh.
And it has a whole bunch of advantages. You can drink it to live longer. If you ever seen the movie Jupiter Ascending, right? It's kind of like that.
I have not seen that movie.
And you can, harvest it for magical power and do all kinds of things with it. And so there is a trade in souls, and the factions that you work for by default are generally against the soul trade because, well, if I have to explain why ripping people's souls out of their bodies is bad,
Let me
then
say this. Jay Koch says Nemesis is a bit too much like real life. Late stage capitalism. Oof. You're,
well, yeah, it's
you're
kind of like
speaking my
that.
mind.
I
Yeah.
mean, what you can do is you can kind of, there are different ways of interacting with it. Um, I think in our game we've only actually stepped in a netherworld, right, in a hell plane, like once or twice, but we've dealt with stuff coming out of it, right? So one thing, like right now, our group is on an alternate Earth, in an alternate Munich, and there's something from the netherworld that is chasing us down a train. It's some dragon demon thing, right? So
Yeah.
it's a straightforward fantasy combat chase challenge, right? And you can certainly do things at that level, and that's fine. You are still being as true to the game, true to the setting as any other approach. Um, if you want to go a bit darker, then there are examples in the Five and Infinity adventures that we released on PDF. Specifically, there's the Soul Trade by Neil Price, and then there's Midnight Gold by Crystal Fraser. And both of those, Neil's adventure deals with the Soul Trade and with darker motifs, and then in Crystal's adventure, you're going to this sort of noirish urban industrial literal hellscape, right? Where people gamble their souls and other souls in a casino that's set up for. And if you owe people money, years as this chain that gets heavier and heavier and bigger as it wraps around your arm. It's
Jeez, you're quite literally describing this very phase of my life.
Yeah. So basically, each of them represents a different degree of involvement in that aspect. Um, so there's really a lot you can do. I mean, one of the things that I like as a campaign style for one where you don't necessarily go all of the planes. You're centered in sort of a smaller set of planes, or even just one, and but you can still utilize the other stuff because it's coming in. Right? That's why gates are designed to be sort of persistent and hard to close, right? So that stuff can come through it, and it's a problem. Yeah.
I gotcha.
The other thing too is that there's a lot of traditional supernatural horror imagery, Nemesis stuff, in Netherworld, but that's not all it has to be. I mean, those worlds also can reveal themselves as these sort of, as urban density run amok, as sort of a mechanical realm, um, machine angel inhabitants demand perfection out of you, and all these other. So you don't have to use any imagery that that your group doesn't find. I hope that answers the question.
So basically, be dystopian enough that it's fun and not horrifying.
Yeah, and not horrifying, right?
Um,
Or I mean, even if you do want to be horrifying, it is always better to get in slow, right?
yeah,
Because if you present the biggest, like some some of our gentle viewers may know, that I have actually I've been for 21
wow,
years, and before that, I worked on a lot of fantasy. And one of the things is that having the big scare, the big menace, be front and center diminishes everything else. So it's better to lead up to it, right?
right.
And then one of those things, you can kind of test how your group at each thing. This doesn't take the place of briefing where you say, "I'm going to introduce think," um, but it's always better to also see what people
Yeah,
as you go.
and I
Right?
think
People can change their minds.
exactly, exactly. And well, the other thing as well is if you're creating this world and there are classic story tropes to kind of deal with sort of this, this feeling of decay and exchange rates that involve you know humans, and in this case humans or soul juice that we're calling it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
humans are basically soul juice
yeah, exactly.
from that point of view.
But that it can get a little heavy in that it's not so much scary, but that it kind of can. I can see a space where it might be pushing someone a little closer to nihilism.
No, it's hard to top some of the advice that's given Star Wars role playing game 80s, right? Kostikian, as and it's one of the great chunks of writing about game mastering because it talks about, well, you to emulate Star Wars, and but one of the things that you don't see in Star Wars are the worst things that the Empire is typically doing,
Like a
right?
toilet.
Well, no, you don't see, yeah, you don't. They're poor hygiene.
Right.
Um, but no, what these things like? Well, yes, the Empire probably does uh, run horrible prison camps and all of these things, but it's not. But Star Wars isn't about that part. Um,
Hey,
however, and it's
hold on for 1 second. I'm getting some reports of you breaking up, and it could be. Um, Double checking, just you might be not quite there, but we'll give it just a moment.
yeah, I see the space code again.
Oh, you see Space Goat?
I do when I just hold on. Da, 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 da. Hold on,
Let's
I think I'm on the wrong thing. Oh,
give
all
it
right, I see myself moving around.
just never know. I have I'm breaking up with Malcolm. Had it. Had it with your Canadian politeness. Okay, sounds like we're back on track, my friend.
All right. Anyway, to wrap up what I was going to say, hopefully I was long-winded enough that you heard the first bit, so it's relevant. Is that stick to running the game that you want to run. Take the parts of the setting that you want to take to portray that. You don't owe anything to the setting. accept what you use at the table.
As I age, as I'm getting, I'm disembodied. So as I age, I just become sort of a stinkier cloud. And it's always the simplest answers that, it's like you were wearing the shoes the whole time. Like you had the power to go
Mhm.
home, like it's all within you. And all that is very corny, when you think about it in that sort of way. But it's sometimes okay to just do the thing that is healthy, and to like it doesn't
Mhm.
always have to be a slog. You don't have to like
Yeah, yeah.
whip
And we talk
yourself
about
and but
we talk about that too in Trojan War, right? Because excuse me, one of the things that we talk about in Fantasy Age Trojan War is that um, you know there are a lot of problematic things about the myths of that period, right?
Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt. But I mean, you're talking about a story uh, that revolves around
Yeah.
uh, really, kind of really objectionable attitudes about gender and about people's freedom and things like that. But here's the thing: one of the things that you know that the Trojan War has inspired has always been people making it their own. I mean, Iliad is not um, Iliad is not a document.
Right.
Whatever and it differs from whatever historical conflict based on any. And people have always, added their own things. I mean, the Romans had Aeneas fanfic that they, that they made a part of their founding mythology.
David Hubbard
And
says a straight Achilles.
yeah, um, but if you look, for example, at portrayals of the Trojan War in the Middle Ages, um, this is something where they illustrated it as if everybody was wearing armor from the period, so medieval armor, and they were attacking a medieval castle. That's how it was portrayed.
They were attacking a what?
And
Uh,
when
you
in
said
the
a
Middle
medieval.
Ages,
Yeah, you said a medieval what? They were attacking a medieval.
castle.
Oh, I heard something totally different, and I'm just gonna let you. Sorry for interrupting.
Oh, wow.
No, I mean no, it's just me. I'm.
But and when one of the things that is in the mythology are when the Amazons show up and Achilles has a duel with one of them, and there are other accounts of duels with different Greek heroes in Amazon. They portray those as medieval jousts, right, where people are wearing, the armor that they would be wearing in France in the 14th century.
Mm.
So, so it's perfectly fine to change as much as you want, right?
And this is a space
To
where,
change the
yeah,
genders of the participants,
sure.
um, to do to change. Of course, the course of events is going to change the way the heroes do it, so on and so forth. But I mean, that's ultimately it: is taking the material and making your own.
Can I
In
can I
modern
add something
age,
real
we
fast?
have a bunch of options to make that happen. But it should be just comes with the game mastering.
I want to add too that it doesn't mean that your preferred method for playing trumps all other. I mean, like we're talking about a diversity of gamer, and there's people allowing people
Yeah.
to gender bend and do the thing that they want to do.
Hmm.
In so much as it isn't, offensive in the way that we all understand. But it just sort of galls me. There are times when people are just like, "What? You can't, this is just my headcanon. You're hurting me." And it's like, "Sorry, pal.
Well,
People
you can do
people
your
get to
own thing
play."
with your own head.
Right? That's right. That's absolutely right.
So I don't know. It's one of those things. Um,
Oh, Rain says I played a lovely game recently where Jason and the Argonauts were the villains.
oh yeah, that could work.
Fun.
That could work quite well. Um, I mean, in the sources, of course, heroes are you're proud of them, because if you were in the period, right, these heroes are our national ancestors, for example. Um, and But at the same time, they all, so often people meet terrible ends at their hands. They meet terrible ends. God's mad at them,
Or
whatever. So you
diphtheria.
can really, I mean, you have to be careful though, because if you made Achilles the villain, for example, right? He's supposed to be the greatest warrior ever. This week when we did the blog article and I did a set of possible game stats for Achilles, um, certainly he's going to have to be your final boss in a typical fantasy age game, because otherwise he'll just kill you, and that's not fun.
I do one of my favorite joys. It's just a little thing that feeds my spirit as we do these live streams is when I get to read in the chat when when my boss says Troy, and then I have to think back to what I said. I can't quite remember what it was, but it could have been many. Rain says we had to get the gold fleece back from them. Also, we stole their boat. I love it. I love it. I love it. Hey, there is a motion on the floor. I would like to call to your attention, Malcolm, that 3 people have signed up to throw their hands in or to throw their hat in. I don't know. They want to play. They want to play. And those 3 people are me, in addition to David Hubbard and the lovely Nicole Lindros. And so yeah,
Oh,
yeah. And so we're how would you cap it off at 6? Like a 6 your max? What's your preferred
oh,
density?
my ideal number is 4.
Right, but then if I'm on there, then that's like 5. That's
Yeah, I don't think I want to do more than 5. 6 is when it starts to get a little wonky.
oh, for sure. I was just saying that I'm as obnoxious as 2 people who don't know what the hell they're doing.
Oh.
So, but yeah, so we have one more. So Jeremiah McCoy asks, "Hi kids, should we be expecting any more expansions of threefold?" I'm adding this part
um,
like a fourfold.
well, we did the Five and Infinity Adventure series and released it as serial PDFs. But we are putting them back together for their, what was their original planned configuration, which was one book. And as one book, it not only includes plot generation, the Infinity Engine plot generation tool that was included in that series, but it expands it to add a plane generation tool as well. So I believe the plan is for that to go into print. As for additional new threefold things, that is in discussion. Because right now I have a project I can't talk about.
My little pony,
So,
my little pony.
but I will tell you about 2 things I can talk about though that are coming. Mastery Guide, which is, and I've been told I have to describe this really well, so my best here. For most games, it would be that Game Master's Guide that Game Lines make. Right? Except in our case, we have also um, made it a guide for people who want to improve their play or want more tools to play in modern age. Right, so that's the Mastery Guide, Player's Engine, and has a whole bunch of stuff. Then after that, at some point, it's all written, waiting for the right place in the cart, is Modern Age Powers, which expands upon the psychic material and magic material that's in the core, and adds additional stuff for other extraordinary powers, freeform powers, and a whole bunch of supporting things. A whole section ordinary items, magic items,
Jazz
things made by
flute.
aliens.
Oh.
Because I'm not saying it was aliens, and stuff like that. So that's coming. So there's plenty of stuff for modern age. For threefold specifically, I have some plans. See how those plans against other people.
Some real
Like
solid
the
ideas.
plans of the very company that this stream is about.
Aha. Um, Interesting. Well, so Rain says centerfold, sultry adventures in threefold.
Oh no.
Yeah, I'm not even. I could Rain joke about that, but I'm not going to. And how dare you even try? How dare you even try to appeal to my lowest common denominator? David Hubbard says, so I've never played the age system. I'm a newbie to this, despite being an RPG veteran. David, you and me both. I mean, I have played age, but I have, I've got some things to learn, and it's not one to one. Like there's the fundamentals are there, but it changes by line, right?
Yeah. Um so age kind of creates this really powerful framework, which is the way the tests work and the way the stunts work. And the way character advance up. But after that, individual line kind of add its own variation.
Right.
And
Like
we
for
learn
with
from each other and we iterate on each other's stuff and stuff
well,
like that.
like for Blue Rose, Joe Carricker has added a slap mechanic, and so if you do something, he just slaps you. He doesn't.
Yeah,
I'm
it's true. You
kidding.
can't
He
use
would
that
never.
right now.
Yeah, right. He can't wait for
Yeah.
conventions and being inoculated against. I'm joking. He wouldn't slap a fly. Hey, I want you to.
However, Blue Rose,
Yeah, go
there's
ahead.
Blue Rose did was the first line to the age rules relationship. Got adopted it.
I like it. I do like
So
this. I do. I love this sort of. It feels like just a very organic incubation space for good mechanisms of resolving and sort of engaging in all manner of interaction, and I like it because it has this universal appeal, that it's yeah. Let's see here. David says, I love Joe. We all love Joe. If Joe really had a slap mechanic, I'd still play.
yeah, I mean, if you played one age game, picking up a new one takes next to no. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
well,
mean, There's just much. I would find. I think the main challenges are um, remembering your talents, right? So your talents are like your secondary little beneficial ability, and people constantly, including me playing it, constantly forget that they have talents that let them better it,
it's like
right?
life, honestly.
It is like life. Like when you buy milk, and already have milk, like I did. Hey,
So now you have 2 bags of milk.
oh, I don't have. Yes, I am in Canada, but I do not buy milk by the bag.
You buy it by the shoe, by the
I
boot.
buy by the shoe. Yeah, the other our less known actual
Conveyance.
unique unit of measurement.
The
Shoe,
boot.
the
One
boot.
boot, Phil. Take this to the utter. I need my warm boot milk. Oh, put me off dairy.
Yeah, that is. Oh, extra polish. Right. So
Well, listen to this. We have got 5 minutes left, and I just as we were talking, whipped together something that I am mildly embarrassed. But we do a thing. We try to flap Owen. And I will tell you this. I brought up on stream. I said I'm going to try to flap Malcolm, and he said, "Don't you dare try to flap him." And so Owen's not here today. I'm going to try to flap you. I mean, I may get in trouble, but I'm going to try to flap you. Are you ready to be flapped?
by definition, I am not.
That is, I guess, true. See, now you're flapping me. Come on. Turning Tables. Okay, ready? Here we go. Toe curdled boot milk. Thank you, Pook. Yes, David.
Oh,
Gross. I wish my players
I'm
remember
really
half of the
sorry
towns
I
that
read
they.
that.
Yes, I am too. It's very evocative. Let me
Yeah.
cleanse your palate with this. Hey, Malcolm. Stat this. Can you see it?
Sorry, I'm riding my pretend pony.
It
I see
is,
what?
yes. We're off to the races. Look, you'll see it when it comes up here in a little delay.
Oh, a little robot man?
Sure.
Is robot man beat? Okay, well, I guess actually in modern age you have the AI characters, modern age companion and for things like robots. That's the background that you would pick. And I guess really the best I have to go on are this robot's physique and attitude. Now, in terms of physique, I'd stick to the averages. I don't see bulging servo motors on. I'm not sure how smart it is though. But maybe it's just trying to be friendly. And it is terrible when people, mistake cruelty for intelligence. So yeah, I'm gonna say this robot is smart. Plus it has a little processor stamp, so it's obviously being computer. Let's give it like a 3 intelligence. It has those grabby claws, which I distrust. We don't have a grabby claws fighting style, so obviously the problem with I'll have to fix it. Thanks a lot for pointing that out. I got all for the grabby claws. Oh, but it has to have a low constitution because it is a little wind-up key. So I assume it's only good for one encounter at a time. You gotta crank it and then let it go. And I don't know. I have some suspicions about this thing generally because it looks, it kind of looks like some kind of steampunk nonsense. And I know you were talking about that before. So.
I was. You've literally picked out everything that I was trying to convey with this.
All right.
I'm flapped.
Oh.
How dare you, sir? You're the guest host. Well, listen, so yeah, well done, because I wanted to make it, my idea here was that this was more of a friendly malfunctioning bot.
Oh.
That you're right.
Oh,
that
I
is sort of
see.
this bot they have a sort of a daily sort of thing that they're doing that is no harm to anyone, and it does sort of look like it's in distress as opposed
I
to
don't know.
trying to.
I'm suspicious of it. It looks like it's flailing wildly.
It is that definitely, and shooting laser beams just haphazard all over the place.
Yeah.
Rain says I would be interested in a live stream of Threefold if there's still a space. Rain, I think you were the last person. Am I wrong? I think I'm right. Everybody except for whom I know, which is Nicole. But David and that's me and Nicole and Rain. That is Disco Parts. David, you were looking right into my soul. It is a disco robot. Run amok, I say. My friend, this has been so much fun. I always appreciate hanging out and talking with you. Do you think that you would be interested in popping on again sometime? Whoa. Okay, awesome. Maybe we kind of switch it up a bit, because this is ThursdAGE. Not just Thursday only, it's Thursday all. And I want to thank specifically all the folks who are hanging out in chat. Always a blast. Thank you so much. I'm serious about, I won't pester, but I will certainly get us all on a list, and we will wait until Malcolm's dance card is free, and then we will dance. But we'll do a stream. It'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it because I definitely want to learn a little bit more about the lore within the modern age setting. And what's weird is that you pronounce it modernage, which is odd. Modernage. You really don't. I'm being obnoxious.
Oh, I miss modernage.
I'm on modernage. Once
you done
a
run
day.
off.
You done
the dog.
Modernage. Ah, that's good stuff. Well, listen, it's 3:01, and that means we need to depart. But Malcolm, thanks again for hanging out. I really appreciate it. Thanks for everybody and your great questions and your thoughts. I know that there are some other things like Jeremiah McCoy asked, are there any modern age style settings you would like to do but haven't had a chance to? Do you want to finish on that question? And then we'll...
Yes, in fact, there is another setting that I hoped to release, but COVID happened.
Oh,
And I would say, yeah, I have some tips for Creators Line.
oh yes, yeah. Oh, right. I forgot. Thank you for bringing that up.
So I have no plans to produce a steampunk setting. Not exactly my wheelhouse.
Right.
And I betcha someone could do it.
That is a good idea.
Is for Fantasy Age, well, Greek mythology is all in the public domain. And I did not. One of the things that that the book does not have, that doesn't have entirely new, does have modifications for Fantasy Age and the Gary, extra traits they can have. But there was just such a strong basis already. And of course, they're really on monsters in the Trojan War. So when it comes to things like Greek heroes, monsters,
Inner monsters,
and adventures set in that Greek mythic period, anybody could to synergize with Trojan War. Well, that would just be dandy to see.
So interesting. And I want to add to that as far as what's going on with the Age Creators Alliance. Everybody knows you've got your email. If you're signed up, we have a deadline to get your stuff into the shared folders by the 10th, or you won't be in the seed program. I mean, you can publish, of course. This is just the launching point. We just need to get that stuff in there and ready to go because we're ready to go. Trust me. And some folks have done that. But Rain also says, Malcolm, I hope we can also get you back on the ages. But it's the podcast that they do, and we should do that.
Yeah,
we should get
there before.
Yeah, we should send all of our folks there. I'm anybody whose line is kind of doing stuff, because that's a pretty cool group.
I should get in. I mean, how much time does developing the...
I mean, honestly, it's just space crankiness, right? It's just sort of like, yeah. Listen, we could do this for another hour, and I would love every living minute of it. But I'm on my second day after being vaccinated, and I need some, I need to lay down and take a nap. I will do that. Again, Malcolm, thank you so much. Hey, folks, you know what comes up next on Monday? It's Mutants and Masterminds Monday, and we hang out with Crystal Frazier, Steve Kenson, me, and then you, and then, and we talk about, I mean, not you, Malcolm, but you're welcome. You actually do pop in once in a blue. I see you hanging out in the chat. 2 p.m. Pacific, whatever that is in your time zone, and join us because we've got some great stuff coming. Really great stuff. Malcolm, everyone says thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll take you up on your
popping by and listening.
Yeah, absolutely, everybody. Thank you so much. And we'll take you up on your interest in joining us in the future. But for now, we say adieu. Goodbye, everyone.